In the world of language learning, it's very fashionable to say that you have to travel abroad to learn a language. The only way to really learn a language is by going and living in the country. And I've always found myself saying that actually, although traveling abroad is cool, you don't need to do that at all. And in fact, you can learn just as much by staying at home. So today, I'd like to contradict myself and say that actually traveling abroad and going to other countries, going to the country where your language is spoken, is extremely important. Not necessarily for the same reason though. So, as I've said before in many videos, if you're starting to learn a language from scratch, in particular, you're going to get more done, you're going to learn more, you're going to make faster progress if you are staying at home. Simply because being abroad doesn't help you learn the basics. The basics have to be studied. And you can't really do that very well by just trying to chat to people when you don't know their language, because that's a rubbish way of learning. The best way to start learning any language is by systematically sitting down and applying yourself and doing some proper good old-fashioned study, at least until the point where you've got a foundation of knowledge on which to start speaking or whatever else you want to do in the language. I'm a big proponent of studying from home and not traveling abroad to start learning a new language, although obviously it becomes more important later on. But having said all of that, there's a certain amount of learning that you can only do when you're abroad. We're here in Spain right now, in the Canary Islands. You can see in the background. Beautiful place. And it's been some time, been a couple of years since I've been here. And over the last few years, I've been speaking a fair amount of Spanish with friends back home, with Angela, who I run the Fluent Spanish Academy with. We speak a lot of Spanish together. And Spanish is a big part of my daily life. But there's something different when I come here and I speak to people here, whether it's on the street or in restaurants or whatever. You walk into the environment and you hear people speaking and you have to interact with them. It's like you cannot replicate that anywhere else, and you develop a kind of real understanding, real affinity, a real knowledge of the language when you are using it in the place itself, in the real environment where it's meant to be used. You also develop a certain kind of reaction time, which is really important. When you walk into a restaurant and someone asks you something, it may be that you understand it, but if you can't react like immediately, then you're not as good as you could be. But if you kind of walk into a restaurant and someone asks you something and you get it wrong or you don't quite understand, and then you do the same thing again the next day and the next day, then you improve and you learn and your reaction time speeds up and all of that. And so that's the kind of thing you can only really get when you're in the country. So I'm a big fan of traveling to different countries in order to just get that little bit of magic, that little magic ingredient that you can't get elsewhere. And the reason I say this is because I meet a lot of people who have never traveled abroad or who have not traveled abroad to the country where they're of the language that they're learning for many years. And so if that is you, then I would encourage you to consider booking a trip at some point. It doesn't have to be right now. It could be next year maybe. But two things are going to happen. First of all, the excitement of knowing that you're going to travel there is going to motivate you to study more. And secondly, in your time in the country, you will learn certain things, you will come into contact with certain people, you'll find yourself in certain situations that will just elevate your language skills to that little bit higher up. And of course, when you leave and you go back home, which is always the unfortunate ending to any trip, you will be in a much more confident position and be able to use your language with more soul and passion as a result. So that's what I've got for you today. Hope that's given you some food for thought, and I'll see you back in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more videos like this, although they might not all be such nice surroundings.